Good morning. What is great, good, and real? And welcome, wakey, wakey. Welcome to day 34 of the Do You Rules live stream experience. I am what is referred to as a host, someone who speaks into a mic, believing that what they have to say is relevant and is something you want to hear. And I go by the name of Cliche Jeff. Let's get right into a material check. What time is it? There you go. And my flashlight is on. We have a time. We have our medicated chapstick. We have some branded water that keeps us hydrated. And it's cracked just in case. We have the secretive, not so secretive red book of thoughts that influence everything I'm going to say with the hopes and perception that whatever I have to say is meaningful. Otherwise, why would I say it? And so, with that as a backdrop, as we settle in emotionally, I also have my blanket. It snowed yesterday, and I can hear the folks outside going through my complex and removing the snow, which is slightly distracting in that I hear the trucks beep, beep, beep. It's not something I'm used to. And so, because I'm not accustomed to having that in my consciousness, any sound is, it alerts me and it's somewhat disturbing. It is. It is. It's annoying. I don't want any disruptions at 426. I don't care if you're plowing my driveway. I don't I'd rather do it. Okay. We're going to ask some questions today because we ask questions every day. And the questions we're going to ask are around if we can always be better, what is the point? When is it enough? I think those are logical questions. And I had another question I wanted to answer that it's not coming to me right now. But let's consider that. Okay. Okay. I read something yesterday. It's a Latin root. So there's a word, a Latin root. I really can't find my space here that's going to make me comfortable. Er, okay. Relax, Jeff. It's just a mic. It's just the world potentially. It's 427 now. Set a timer for 5 a.m. All right, folks. There's a root word in Latin, ecstasis, which, if you could sort of hear what that sounds like, translates into ecstasy. And I'll get into what that means momentarily, but it does sort of provoke the question around if we can always improve, if there's always more room, if there's a reality to the fact that we are imperfect, what is the point? What is the point? And naturally, somewhat you might get the urge to say, well, that is the point. But left to really consider that possibility in how we live today and how our minds work, operate, flow, our rhythms, patterns, and habits, is there a prevailing thought that is somewhat limiting us from the perspective of what is the point? If I'm never going to reach an end, and actually, the end I'm going to reach is death because we all go there, we all get there. It comes from each of us, it comes for each of us. And it certainly isn't predictable because if we knew when it was coming, we'd probably live a little differently. How ironic that we know for sure it'll come, but because we don't know when, we have this misconception of time that is not necessarily owed or guaranteed to us. However, the likelihood of us having time relative is more likely that it's available than unavailable, even though we don't know how much. But since we know it's likely more available than unavailable, we'll do less about the improvement process for ourselves because we have time. But we don't, do we? So, okay, I get to this thought. This thought about if we can always be better and we can always improve, what's the point? I thought about this. We can get better every day. The guarantee is that we can get better every day. And the guarantee is that the more isolated and imbalanced that we balance ourselves towards a singular focus, then we are becoming hyper aware, hyper diligent, and hyper and overly powerful in an explicit area. Let's call it a niche, an expertise. That the more we drive towards a singular direction, the more powerful we become there, the less powerful we are everywhere else. Is that not logical? If I focus all my attention in one direction, and there's many directions, the directions you can go in are infinite. The guarantee is while I gain strength in this one direction, there are a litany and a plethora of directions in which I could go, in which I have no knowledge, no strength, no authority, no power. Why? That's how the world works. So in that way, we can become massively dominant in a specific space, which feels great. However, even in the direction we move, sometimes we don't look like success. Sometimes we don't look like success. And this can be sort of an insecurity of mine that I will share rather openly from many different perspectives. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. Sometimes we don't look like success. So we're these imperfect creatures chasing perfection. Imagine that. We're these imperfect, isolated, individualized creatures that really are a sum of something that is massive and infinite beyond our imagination and thought. It is why I believe so deeply that those who find success at levels that are almost unthinkable for most of us get there because they broaden their scope from the perspective of things are so large, things are so massive and great and grand, and there's God. I have that power and authority to realize that the vastness of all is so immense. There has to be something greater. I can leverage that to move in the direction I need to go, to accept the fact that I'm imperfect and that I will never achieve perfection because perfection is relegated to God only. That offers me a sense of security that I can stumble, I can trip, I can fall, I can go through the insecurities of life because ultimately it's bigger than me anyway. And in that same way, I can have the intentionality to say, as I am discovering myself and empowering myself and becoming myself, I can use that source to be of service to the broader and greater scale that is the infiniteness of whatever it is we're in. However, as I wrote down, sometimes we don't look like success. but we delegate authority away from ourselves to say it's bigger than us. Okay, cool. Why is that relevant? A little of my story that makes me massively insecure. And I feel like I've taken with me everywhere and is something I use to inspire, motivate, and drive me towards finding success. And the reason is the simplest way I can put it is I didn't always look like the dude that you would expect to have success. I stood out in ways that you don't really want to stand out in. And because of that, I struggled with, well, what is success? But at the same time, I knew I had to get success because it was really awkward to not look like I belong and be unsuccessful. Imagine, consider, if you just take a good look at me, maybe you can hear it in my voice. Maybe you can't. I am from the South Bronx in New York, from the projects, ultimate poverty lifestyle. And if you don't know what comes with that, if you don't know the background as far as what the hood would be, like when I say to you, I'm from the hood, do I look like I'm from the hood? Do I sound like? If you close your eyes and said, what would it look like to embody the South Bronx in the 80s, the hood? Would you see my face? You could, if you're watching this and you want to comment, does Jeff look like he's from the hood? The answer is probably no. However, in the same way, if you talk to other people who are from where I'm from, they easily can determine and understand that I'm from the same place. Work with me. Sometimes we don't look like success. The reality of the success that is the requirement for success for where I came from, because I don't look like success from there, it made it really difficult to get out of there, because it made it really difficult to survive in there. I wrote that down yesterday in my phone. I'm going to paraphrase a bit because I don't want to kill my flow. Are you just living to survive? Are you just living to survive? We're talking about sometimes you don't look like success no matter what you do. Are you just living to survive? And the reality is, in order for me to survive where I came from, I had to make the least amount of noise as possible. Why? I wasn't willing to subscribe to what it took to be successful in the area I was raised in, the environment I was raised in. It said, in order to see success, and success is not just like, what is success? Success is also fitting in, is it not? Because when we don't fit in, we stand out. When we stand out, we become very vulnerable. We become a target. And so in that way, my inability to fit in with how I look, with how I behaved, was very, very, very difficult to manage and overcome, and produced an immense amount of fear. Fear that was limiting because I didn't know what to do, how to navigate, and where to go. Since clearly, in order for me to be successful, to fit in and be able to not just survive, but somehow thrive. Think about the irony in that. That where I was raised and brought up in order to thrive, you have to fit in the way you would fit in any environment. But what did it mean to fit in this environment? Like any environment, you take risks. Like any environment, you put effort towards the clear path that will enable you the ability to sustain a level of success, to avoid all the fear derivatives that come with being unsuccessful in this environment. And the reality to escaping that environment, the mindset, the influence, and the overall reality was I had to keep standing out in order to not just fit in and fall in. Sometimes we don't look like success. And so in that way, being from where I'm from, not matching the view you would expect made success very difficult. I digress from the perspective of that's life. Sometimes the environment that you're surrounded by is not for you. And sometimes you can acknowledge that and use it as a way to thrive. Sometimes you just figure out how to survive. Are you just trying to survive with your life? Or are you trying to thrive, achieve, and come out? The irony and the difficulties of that, right? Sometimes we don't look like success. Perfection, in the terms of language, thought, and feeling, cannot exist for us. As I've already said, that's relegated to God only. So if that is the guarantee that we will always be imperfect because we can never achieve perfection, why bother? Why bother? If we're never going to really get to where we think we can possibly get to, why bother? What's the point? I am accepting of I am imperfect, which means I'm never going to quite achieve it all. Why bother? What is the point to improving if we can always be better? Somebody's going to say that's the point. But at what point do you improve, and say, damn, I still got room to be better? When is it enough? That was part of the second half of the question that now came to me. When is enough enough? What is enough? How do we define enough? I am imperfect in that way also, that the perfection of enough to me, I can't even put words and wrap words around it. What does it mean? What's the sense in overcoming if we remain susceptible to the same mistakes? Imagine that. That today you can overcome, today you can run the obstacle course, today you can confront the demons, today you can thrive. However, that same obstacle course, those same demons, the same worries could stop you tomorrow. We're always susceptible. If I could overcome and still not end up where I want to be because I'm imperfect, and I'm susceptible to the same mistakes when I know that I shouldn't do it, why bother? What is the sense and strength to have the same weaknesses? I'm just asking some questions. What does it all mean? Why bother? Give me a second here. What is going on in your life today? What is going on in your life today? There is a word, I think I already said it, ecstasies, or I've said it in my head, which, if you haven't realized, sounds like ecstasy. And apparently, possibly, maybe we can reach ecstasies in our life, which I'll get into what that means, possibly. But I want to talk about some other things here. Why bother? Why bother? When is it enough? If it is guaranteed that I will remain imperfect, and it is guaranteed that there's always room for improvement, however, I remain susceptible to the same weaknesses, the same struggles, and the same pain, the same fear, why bother? And in that way, in this finite that is coupled and tied and tethered to the infinite, if you are not looking to improve every day, if you are losing sight of the fact that we don't know how much time, I would argue that the difficulties we find ourselves in, particularly with the lifestyles we're living today, the immediacy of life, the urgency that life is promoting to you by the second, this real time lifestyle, that we can talk about the influence on our rhythms and habits and patterns and what it all really means. So easily overlooked, so outside of the casual conversation, dismissed as if it has no real authority or impact on our imperfection, allowing the misconception that somehow we can perfect ourselves. It becomes a detriment. What do I think this all means possibly for us? Because we are imperfect, and a lot of this is tethered and tailored around the physical aspect. We have a body. Our bodies are just a luxury of harmony and bliss when really considered what the body does for you without you having to force it, without you having to manage it, dictate, or delegate to. The body, immensely beautiful and imperfect in that it can't sustain but for so long. It's that whole life expectancy thing. We know this. Consider that. The body you have, this one physical body that without it, there is no mind, there is no spirit, there is no pursuit of perfection or reality of imperfection or releasing of delegation and authority to a higher being and purpose. Consider then that when we cease to fight to be better every single day and improve to be better every single day, the reality of your imperfection will hit you. And when it strikes you, it will feel sudden. The collapse of who we are, the collapse of our essence and being, the collapse of our lives is not as sudden as we perceptually believe and would like. The collapse of who we are is occurring as we release the possibility to improve and improve and improve and improve. For to not choose to improve is to choose to allow yourself to be diluted by life and the imperfection and reality of who we are. And then left with an immediate problem or a sudden problem, a collapse that becomes so sudden, whether it be physical or the job loss or the family loss or the life loss. We suddenly confuse urgent with immediate. That this reality of what is now occurring to us in the moment appeared suddenly and out of nowhere. That the physical body might have broke down and deteriorated suddenly. That the loss of all material came to fruition suddenly. That the cause and effect of all that goes on in the mind, the thoughts, the doubt, is also sudden. When in truth, we're repeating that in our immediacy by the moment. Think about what I'm saying here. Think about what I'm saying here. I wrote this down. I think it's important. Check on time. It's almost 4:50. Why bother? I believe there is a massive long-term sufferance to a lifestyle of quick and fast choices. Instancy and immediacy and abundance, which is really the choice you make and the choices you make by the second, is hard to overcome because when left to collapse, you want an immediate fix. There is no immediate fix for the constant immediate choices you make that put you in the life you're living. This is because our immediate lifestyle has blinded, confused, and confounded time. There's no long-term sustenance to short-term abundance. An awakening to this reveals the tragedy that there is no short-term fix. You have a long-term problem. There is no quick fix for that. Because we've made countless short-term, short-sighted fixes of dependencies toward abundance. Therefore, our mind is tricked into believing everything happens so quick. And so therefore, so should the fix. The detox off the instancy of abundance is deep. I think those are great words. And I think what I'm trying to express here is, I'll tell you like this, for somewhat of an analogy. We go back to the physical body. The physical body. We all know we need the physical body to live. There's no moving forward in life without the physical body. And yet, the large majority, particularly Americans, but I believe it's everybody, when I'm talking about people, the large majority of people are overweight, trending towards obesity. I'm not, whatever, your body, your life, heart disease, diabetes, and all these other sudden collapses of the body occur over a long-term period of short-term indulgences. Now consider that we frown and get very uncomfortable and start to think that maybe somebody's body shaming or making someone feel less than, and they shouldn't be judged and criticized. Let's think of it like this. The weight loss industry, the weight loss pill industry, for lack of a better term and context, is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Meaning, we as people are constantly buying, looking for pills and substances and products to help us lose weight immediately. Making these short-term investments for a quick fix, but we remain dangerously overweight. You see the contradiction? We don't want to be told, we don't want to agree and acknowledge that we're making all these short-term immediate decisions, which aren't healthy, cause a collapse, create a sudden panic around, this just happened. You've been doing this to yourself over and over and over and over and over again, and now it feels like suddenly you're here. We don't want to acknowledge that. We don't want to talk about that out loud. We don't want to shame anybody, but we'll invest multi-billion dollars into the possibility of trying to fix it. Is that not what we're doing? When we make that type of investment into the types of things we make investments into with the hopes that it's going to take away what's happened to our bodies, what is that? What is that? And now, come outside of the physical space and then ask yourself, what are we doing to our minds? What are we doing to our minds when we're constantly indulging in quick fixes, quick thoughts, quick luxuries? The desire to be constantly stimulated. The fear of boredom. I read something that said some people would rather stick their or rather take an electrical shock than to sit in boredom for like 10 minutes. Are you kidding me? Massive long-term implications for short-term abundance. And make no mistake, the world has never provided more of an opportunity to be incentivized quickly and in the short term. It's just a reality. And so it begs the question also, when is it enough? What is enough? And I believe because of that, we start asking ourselves questions like, well, what's the point? What's the point anyway? What's the point in putting the effort towards pain that we know is long-term healthy, but short-term hurtful? When we can counter that with all these other indulgent, short-term, abundant decisions that are less painful, that make us feel more free, that make us feel better about ourselves. Do we consider the long-term implications of how we feel about ourselves when we're constantly looking for quick, short-term hits to our emotional experience of life? Are we considering the impact to our health when all we see is an immediate abundance to quell the imperfections that exist for all of us? Why do we mask this as if somehow we're isolated and individualized to this experience? How could we be so naive to believe that the pain is just experienced by us in the shadows? This is everyone. This is, you are not, just you alone are not imperfect. We are all imperfect. Just you alone should not be looking to, or just you alone don't have a void where you can improve. Excuse me, I'm about to sneeze. I'm sorry. Oh, I got to use the bathroom. Excuse me. As you can see, and my respiratory issues persist. Why? I'm not perfect. I do cardio just about every damn day, and I still suffer. Anyway, back to my point. The ability to improve is not just true for you; it's true for everyone. And there's going to be truth to the fact that the more you move in one direction, the more you become susceptible. The more you achieve success in one direction, the more unsuccessful, at least by definition and thought and logic, you are in other areas. You just can't be everywhere, and you can't be everything, and it can't all come to you right away. It just can't. And the collapse of you and the collapse of mind, body, and spirit, and or mind, body, or spirit in any direction is a collapse of you really entirely. The machine of it's funny, I talk about we're not machines, but in the same way, the harmony required for us to be succinct in all areas and phases that are allowed for us to be succinct in mind, body, and spirit. It requires harmony and unity. It is why it is constantly referred to by the mystics and those who think deeper than I do, for sure, and philosophize and create religions, the Holy Trinity. I want to leave you with the definition of this word ecstasies or ecstasy. It's not just a pill, right? There's that pill, right? How about this? Refers to a state of being completely outside oneself, characterized by a heightened awareness, intense emotions, and often a feeling of transcendence beyond normal consciousness, usually associated with a deeply spiritual or euphoric experience. Essentially, a state where one is outside of themselves and not fully present in their physical surroundings. Key points about ecstasy or ecstasies. The word comes from the Greek ecstasis, which literally means to stand outside. From a religious context, many religions, ecstasy is described as a mystical experience where one feels a profound connection to the divine, often accompanied by visions or intense emotions. Psychological aspect. Ecstasy can be understood as an altered state of consciousness with reduced awareness of external stimuli and heightened internal experience. That's the ecstasy I seek. That's the life I seek. That's how I want to be. That's how I want to be. Consider. I think we sprawled off in a few different directions here. Man, what's the point if we're imperfect anyway? What's the point if we're always going to be able to improve? Where are we trying to get to? I don't know the answer directly to all those questions, but I do know that if we don't, then what are we left with? A sudden collapse of everything that could have been. That's the difficulty. The sudden collapse of everything that could have been is the closure that none of us want. It is the idea that we are just or have just survived this game of life. I wouldn't want that. Not for you, not for anyone. Change your mind, change your life. I am who I say I am. Do you and stay rich. Ooh.